Alright, y'all. One thing real important before we even get started. I'm going to show y'all what is the most important part of any Ka-18 build. Do not build a Ka-18 without this in this little package right here. So give me a second, I'll open this up for y'all. I'm going to show y'all the most important part of any. Now, this might not apply to the Ka24e as much as it applies to the E, but I'm pretty sure that's the same pitfall. It might be different, but it's 90% chance it's the same thing. So every time you think about taking it apart, get you one of these. You'd rather be safe than sorry. Hold on one second, I'm gonna show you. Alright, so we got this wonderful mystery package on the hood of Stizzy. Let me see if I can rip into it and show y'all what it is. You see that? That'll blow your shit up! Coolant bypass hose, aka engine blow up hose. If you do not replace this, pretty much expect your engine to die. This is the hose that comes from the bottom of the intake at the cylinder head, makes that U-turn and then goes back at the intake or whatever. U-turn hose, blow up hose. Just recognize this right here. If you don't replace that, you'll be cooking the engine. So, you know, just a little something for y'all. Alright, so we back up and running, and you can see my face. I'm not in the dark. I'm gonna try to talk loud enough so that everybody can hear me. Whoever watches, I know it's at least up to 3 or 4 people that watch me by now, so I'm gonna make sure at least they can hear me. And we're gonna talk about how to make some power today, because that's all the country boys really ever into is making power. So give me a second, let me look at this. I don't even think this looks right. Hold on, y'all. Today I'm just going to go over what does it take to make horsepower or just intensify the power in any vehicle, any car, anything with a gas, auto cycle engine. We'll cover it today. It'll probably apply to more stuff, but suck, squish, bang, blow, that's what we're talking about today. So how does it work in the first place? We're talking about the engine. That's what makes the horsepower. So it don't have hair, don't have hooves. It damn sure ain't gonna neigh. But it does do 3 things. It makes a fire. And fire is consistent of fuel, air, and spark. If you intensify the fuel, air, and the spark, it'll make more power. So, how do you do it? Well, the first thing you got to do, the biggest challenge, is to get more air into the engine. The engine basically makes a vacuum signal by the piston moving up and down. It creates a vacuum signal and the valves opening and closing. And it creates a sucking action. Some people call it a pumping action, but an engine really creates a vacuum. It's a sucking action. So you're limited by how much air the piston is able to suck into the engine while it's on this downward stroke until the valve closes again. You know, certain things will determine that, like your camshaft will determine how long the valve opens or how far the valve opens, which all of that really ultimately determines how long the valve is open for. So how long the instant is you have, that's what you're working with to get the most air at any other time. So there's usually 3 ways people do it. We ain't gonna talk about naturally aspirated because, well, that's just how it does it. And modifying an engine to make more power is a little different than adding power to an engine. Adding power to an engine, you're usually going to do it with forced induction. That's going to occur with a turbocharger. That's basically an air pump that's driven off the engine's exhaust signal. And then you have a supercharger. That's another air pump that will force air into the engine that's driven off of the crankshaft. Lastly, you have nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is a chemical that you can inject into the air stream that through its chemical breakdown will actually create more oxygen in the cylinder during the combustion process, allowing you to burn more fuel. So, let's talk about the turbo. Since we got a turbo car sitting here, and that's what I can show you. Let's talk about the turbo for a second. Your turbo basically is, a lot of people like to call it free horsepower. A lot of people like to think, the turbo can just give you gobs and gobs and gobs of horsepower. The farther and farther and farther the engine gets down the track, or the longer it runs, the more it'll do. And truthfully, that really is not the truth. That's not at all. Some people like to think that, if I turn the boost up, the more and more and more pounds of boost I put into the engine, the more power to make. And to some extent that's true, but really not at all. You have to think about it in terms of the engine and not terms of numbers that you measure the engine in. And when you think of it in terms of the engine is just like us. We have to breathe under this atmosphere. So all of the air that we have to breathe is the same air that the engine has to breathe, and it weighs about 14.7 pounds. Roughly 15 pounds of air is on your shoulders everywhere you go all the time, as long as you're on Earth and you're not in a vacuum chamber or something like that. So if the valve opens, air rushes in no matter what. As long as the throttle open, as long as the valve open, as long as there's space for it, air rushes in no matter what, whether the engine is running or not. That's due to the 14.7. When you reach that same amount of pressure that the atmosphere weighs with the amount of pressure that you add with your turbocharger, you're reaching what's called 1 bar. 1 bar is adding 1 additional atmosphere into the potential of what the engine can process. When you add 1 bar and you consider everything else as normal or as static, you should achieve 100% more horsepower, because it's like giving the engine a super easy environment to breathe in. A lot of people think that, okay, well, if 1 bar is good, 2 bars better. And in some cases that can be proven to be true, but the reality is the more and more pressure you put into anything, the more and more heat you create. Once you create heat, the pressure doesn't matter anymore, because the air is actually bigger now, and it's still less of it in the same place, but with more pressure, more heat. You get to a point where it's counterproductive. So basically what you should do if you want to add power to any engine is you should say, okay, let's give it 100% more air, and then let's stop. Let's see what it does. Once you see what that does, and you see what happens, and you see how much of an increase you get, you should be making sure that it's safe. So you make sure that there's no detonation, you make sure there's no excessively lean mixture, you start checking stuff like that, and you can move on to the next step. You don't have to sit here and keep wondering about how much more air are you going to put into this thing. You can move on to the second step of this situation, which is fuel. Fuel can be added in several ways, but if you're going to put more air in there and you want to get the benefit of more power, you're going to think enrichment. Enrichment is the amount of additional fuel that you need under the circumstance where you're making more power that's going to allow it to make more power. You can't make it without burning more fuel, so you have to think about what you're going to do. There's several ways to do that. You can do that manually, and I'm talking about fuel injected. I'm not going to sit here and talk about Granddaddy's car with the Quadra junk, or the File carburetor, or whatever toilet bowl that they put on top of it. I'm talking about an injected car. It's going to be pretty much set up to do what it does. So you're going to get whatever little additional that's left in there, and once you burn that off, you'll start leaning the engine out, and you won't make any more power. You'll be headed towards destruction. Enrichment can come several ways. The easiest, simplest way on an injected car, an older one like this with a return fuel system, is a mechanical FMU or rise and rate fuel pressure regulator. That's going to allow for more fuel pressure to be added to it as the engine sees more stress, and it's going to give you more fuel in those situations. It's only going to be controlled about that much, though. Other ways can be done with nitrous. You would use a jetting, and you'd run a wet shot, and you'd actually just spray the fuel into the engine. And with turbos, a lot of times we modify the injectors and the ECM. And when it gets under a certain load, the ECM adds the additional fuel for the additional torque that needs to be made and to maintain the certain AFRs. So while we know that much about it, and I'm gonna tell you about the spark. The spark is the easiest one. Just make sure it don't go the hell out. That's all you gotta do. Just make sure it don't go out. So with that being said, I'm gonna take you over a tour of the things that it would take to actually build a turbocharger, or a turbo system for your car. I'm sorry, because there are a lot of different ways people go about it, and they make it into way more than it really is. Most people that are not mechanics or have not been experienced in motorsports or been around this before, they won't know what a complete system looks like. They won't know what a complete system is. So they have to pay somebody else for it, and they'll pay the cost plus the fee. God knows what that might be. To build a turbo system for your car, to force induct any car or power add any car of any way, it really just takes a knowledge of what are all the necessary components that it takes to build it. So when you buy a turbo system, some people go through and buy all the components individually because they know what it takes. Some people unfortunately have to buy a kit, and when you buy a kit, basically you're at the liberty of whoever packaged what and what they thought a kit was. None of them are complete. None of them are complete at all. So this episode basically is to tell y'all, or to show y'all, what completes a turbo kit. What is a complete turbo kit, and how you can get all of the parts that it needs, and you won't build it and be so anxious and probably blow up engines before you ever really make power and just destroy shit making sound. So let's begin at the beginning. The first part of any turbo kit is, of course, the turbocharger. I'll get in a little closer later, but I'm going to sit here and talk now. The turbocharger is the pump, is the brains of the operation. If you didn't have that, it wouldn't make any more air. The second part of the turbo kit, which is equally as important, is the turbo manifold. Some of those are cast, some of those are tubular. You know what, let me get y'all up off of this tripod and do this right. But some of them are cast and some of them are tubular. Mine is it's cast. So here's the turbo manifold. This right here, this part right here, is what actually adapts the turbo to the engine. Alright, once you get the turbo and the turbo manifold, the next thing you'll be needing to do is exhaust, because, well, a turbo is part of your exhaust system and it's going to wreck whatever the hell that you had complimentary from the factory at first. So get ready to do everything else. All turbos need to be cooled and or lubricated, so you'll have to do a turbo oil line kit. This is the feed line, and then as you can maybe see, I don't know if we can get in here so you can see or not, but you can kind of see a little red. Let me grab a light. I tell you what, I'm gonna grab a light and that'll show you guys better what we got going on. So let's flick this on, and wham bam, you see that AN line right there? That is where the oil drains back into the oil pan. So once you get your turbocharger and your exhaust system and you got it fully lubricated and everything, you're going to need to control that turbo to keep it from going just out of style, just running all over the place. And I don't know if y'all can see this maybe, but in the back there's a little red thing. That's the wastegate. That bleeds off excessive exhaust once the turbo has reached the capacity that we need. And this pipe right here, that is the dump from it. Right here, that's the dump from it, and that's where the excess exhaust signal that the turbo doesn't use, that's where that goes away from. So you get your wastegate. The next controlling part is the blow-off valve. The blow-off valve allows the excess pressure to build up once you close the throttle, in case you need it, need to pedal it or whatever. You close the throttle, and that's going to keep damage from occurring to your throttle blade or your turbocharger. So once you get all of that, and you get your piping that connects the turbocharger to the engine, you can say, hey, it's boosted. And this is what's going to happen. That engine's going to run, and it's going to build additional power all the way up until the point where you burn off the excess amount of fuel. Once you burn off the excess amount of fuel, it's going to lean out. It's going to make a little bit more power in the course of leaning out, and then if you keep on going harder and harder, you'll burn it up. So once you leave there, you have to go in and replace fuel injectors. You have to replace them with larger units and be able to control them. It's also be a good idea to be able to control the pressure of the fuel you're delivering, and while you're doing that, you might as well go ahead and change the filter and the plumbing that goes to everything so that it'll work. Alright, so now you've got your extra air, you got your extra fuel. You know, the control, I'm not gonna leave it up to y'all, but it's a lot of ways people go, and the technology today now has really made it so it's not really that hard or infinitely expensive like how it used to be. You can actually get engine controls for less than $500 now that allow you to do pretty good stuff. So once you get your turbocharger and you get your exhaust system and you get your blow off valve and your intercooler, your charge tubing, your enrichment fuel done, you can say you're there. But now you need one more thing to keep from squirting oil over the damn place. That is, you need to modify the PCV system of the vehicle. Most of the time what you'll do is you'll leave that, most of the time it goes from the intake tubing to the valve cover, then it'll go from an additional vent to the actual intake itself through a PCV valve. What you need to do is get rid of the tract of that going to the intake and actually just run it to a can that's a vent to the atmosphere so that it doesn't build up pressure. And if it happens to push any oil out, it'll go in the can. Drain that every now and then, pull it back in the motor. That's all you gotta do. It's not really that hard. That keep you from making a fucking mess. Alright, so let me put y'all back on the tripod. And I'm going to tell y'all the most important thing about making horsepower after I sit down. Because it's warm today and I don't want to sit here and stand up and keep talking. Hell, I'm sweating. Alright, so making more power, you burn more air, you put more air in, you burn more fuel, you intensify the spark, you process more mixture in the first place, and you're setting all of that stuff on fire. What do you think is going to happen? The more power it makes, the more heat it makes. By definition, an engine is a device that turns thermal energy into rotational energy. So the more power you make, the more heat you have made, you need to cool that off. I took the stock radiator out. It's an aluminum radiator. I got rid of the belt-driven fan. You don't have to do that part. I do that because, well, I want all the horsepower I'm going to get. But go ahead and just redo the cooling system. Give it more capacity. You know, make it, even if you just somehow just made it hold more coolant, it would be better. But you need to make it have a better rate of being able to cool it, or you won't get to enjoy your horsepower. So, you know, I hope this helps y'all out. I hope I can, you know, explain more what it takes to have a complete kit and not have y'all go out and blow your wad on some shit that somebody packages and they said it was a kit and you buy it and you didn't know, and now after you know, you got to continue to spend money to find out it's a kit. Where if you know what every piece is individually, and you can sit down and say, okay, I want all of these pieces because I need this to do this, and I don't want this or I want that, I maybe want my accessories a little bit different. You can start to piece the things together and build your own custom kit and actually get more than what you need for around the same price as the incompletes that everybody else having. So, thank you for sitting here. We'll talk about that purple bottle at some point. Car culture is coming back. I'm glad y'all watching. Tell you, I'm up to 2s and 3s of people right now, so I want to make sure that I look out for the 2s and 3s of people. And it's going to come back and it's going to be better if this fly ever gets out of my damn face. So, like I said, thanks for watching. like this, share this, subscribe it. At least subscribe it. If you want to be selfish with this and keep it to yourself, that's fine too. But subscribe to it so, you know, at least I know you did it. And I'll come back with y'all with some more work on Stinsy. Probably going to do a few system upgrades, show y'all about the pump or whatever. I don't know what's going on, but whatever y'all see next is going to be good. So I'll holler at y'all later on, and good luck with y'all projects. I hope y'all wish me good luck with mine. Have a good evening, y'all.